Welcome to From Our Family to Yours, the podcast where we share our journey of raising kids on a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. I'm Brittany from the Drudy family, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we explore the joys, challenges, and incredible benefits of embarking a plant-powered lifestyle as a family. We'll dive into our personal experiences, offer practical tips, and chat with the experts who will inspire and guide you on your own path to healthy, compassionate living. From delicious, kid-approved recipes to navigating social situations, we've got you covered. So grab a cup of tea, settle in, and let's embark on this nourishing journey together. Welcome to From Our Family to Yours, where every bite brings us closer to health, happiness, and harmony. Welcome back to our podcast. Today's episode is going to be hopefully done while little guy naps. He's currently napping next to me, and if anyone is in the 3rd month section of babies, you'll know that the naps get kind of short, more like condensed cat naps. So I'm going to try to make this podcast pretty quick, but also it's a really exciting podcast because this is my birth story. Real also announcement is that there's so much opinions on motherhood from pretty much the instant you get pregnant. And so this is a place of no judgment. If you are expecting me to be like pro home birth or pro hospital birth, I'm indifferent. It's really what's best for you and your family. And ultimately, you're in charge of making those decisions for yourself. And I also feel that every mom is making the best decision that they feel is right. So you might be surprised in this podcast to learn that I went the hospital route. But at the end of the day, I'm very happy that I have myself and my son. We're both healthy. We both made it through. And I felt like it was the right decision for our family. With that being said, let's get into it. So baby Paul was due on May 27th. And as you guys may know, that's my mom's birthday. My mom's been passed for 5 years now. So we were shocked whenever the ultrasound / doctor told us that the due date was going to be May 27th. I really was like not even thinking that was going to be it. So it was been a huge blessing, and trying not to put pressure on myself, but it was kind of there like looming over a little bit. It was so special that it could be connected with him, but I felt like there was like all this pressure to actually have him on the date. And as you guys know, babies come generally when babies want to, not when we want them to come. And he did that. He did not come on the 27th. He came a couple of days early, and we're going to get into how that arrived. Another thing is that my all of my ultrasounds throughout my pregnancy flagged our baby as being really, really large. Like from week 20 up into the very end, we got told that our baby was going to be this massive baby. He was in the 99 percentile, weighing, a lot. And so with the ultrasounds, and I asked many times like how accurate they were, and got reassured that they were very accurate. But with that being said, they also put an induction date on the 27th. So they didn't really want me to go past 40 weeks because we were supposed to have this like very large baby. And the message that was told to me, the bigger the baby, the harder it is to come out, the more risk you are for different issues that can happen. So we had an induced date for the 27th. And I had a feeling in my gut throughout my pregnancy that he would come a little bit early. I don't know why. It just was kind of an intuitive feeling I had. And back on that week, we were like getting things ready. I still had stuff to do, of course, don't wait until the last moment to get stuff done. But I wasn't having any like Braxton Hicks. I didn't really have anything that was like showing me that he was coming soon. I didn't lose my mucus plug. There was nothing that was like besides me just feeling uncomfortable, there wasn't any messages that like, "Hey, little guy's showing up early." And so I finished up on Wednesday night on the 22nd, finished up the Healing Kitchen, which is a cooking class that Dr. Marvis and myself run. I finished that up at 8 p.m. And being like 39 weeks and a couple days pregnant, I was like, I'll do the dishes in the morning, leave it there, put away the food, and I'm gonna try to go to bed. And again, for me, as I got closer to my due date, I'd go lay in bed, but getting to bed was a little bit hard. So I drifted off to sleep around midnight. Well, at 2 in the morning, I woke up in bed to my water breaking, and it woke me up. I ran to the bathroom, um, did my best to control the water break, water mess that was happening, and called the number that they gave me in case my water broke. Again, this is 2 a.m. So by the time I call the nurse on call and they get in touch with the doctor on call, they end up telling me to go to the hospital, but this is like waiting for a little bit to have callback. So it ends up being around like 4 o'clock when I hear like, hey, you need to go to the hospital. So thank goodness I had a hospital bag packed. We grabbed that, but before we left, I did all the dishes from the Healing Kitchen and, try to set up things so that my cousin who was coming to watch the dogs for the days that we were in the hospital was all set and they were all taken care of. And then Mark, I think when we woke up at 2 a.m., he wrapped up stuff for work until we heard back from the doctor, and then we both were in the car on the way to the hospital. I think we arrived around like 5-ish AM. So keep in mind, I've only had like 2 hours of sleep at this point. So we arrive at the hospital, get checked in. By that time, they take us to our room, and it's like 6 a.m. And I was dilated to like a 3, 3, 4. They were saying, but I wasn't having any contractions, and they told me my best point of action from here was to start a little pitocin. Now we're gonna talk about. I'm all granola-y, natural as it can come. But I also love that we have hospitals, medicine, doctors, and an area to be safe. And to be honest, my mom, her career for 30 plus years was a labor and delivery nurse. So I just didn't feel comfortable like having a home birth. I didn't feel comfortable um doing anything like that. I know things can go wrong very quickly. For me, my best interest was kind of to rely on my doctor's suggestions with with my information too that I felt was good for us. And when I talked about my birth plan was to get him and me out healthy. That every time someone asked me that, like that was my birth plan. I also said I wanted to like know what a contraction felt like before I opted in for an epidural or anything else like that. But like was very open to everything. And again, this is not a place for judgment. Please don't write me emails about having a natural birth. We did the best decisions we could at the time with what we were given, and at the end of the day, I'm very happy with how my birth went, even though we'll get into it. It gets pretty intense here coming up. So I decided to start a little bit of Pitocin and get that going. And then at the same time, all of the nurses at our hospital had just taken a class called Spinning Babies, I guess, over the weekend. And so they all were, taking classes on how to position moms so that they can get further along easier and all these different positions and different tips and tricks. So, while they're hooking me up to my monitors and things and we start the Pitocin, um, the nurse mentions that I can like walk around if I feel up to it. Now, at this point, I felt like my normal self. I had no pain, no contractions. I felt great. So I knew that, maybe there would be a point where I'm like in bed for long periods of time. So I was like doing laps. so much that, like, the nurses were laughing at me, like, doctors that passed me were laughing at me, like, "You're in your little hospital gown." I have my, like, IV pole, and I'm, like, doing so many laps around the nurse's station, that whole floor. And, they come back and I sit on my little bouncy ball that they pulled out for me, and they take my blood pressure, and my blood pressure is elevated. Now, if you know anything about my, like, background history, I used to have hypertension before becoming whole food plant-based, and over the 8 years with diet and lifestyle changes, I have had beautiful blood pressure. Throughout my entire pregnancy, I've had beautiful blood pressure. Even at my last appointment, at 39 weeks when they saw me, like, the day or 2 before my water broke. Some things I feel like are common sense, like, if your patient is maybe doing laps around and they sit down, maybe give them a minute and then take their blood pressure because, our blood pressures fluctuate. If we're active, it's gonna be a little bit higher, in general. Now, to be said, I probably was, and I know I was, very nervous because one, I'm a little bit more of an anxious person in general. Like I've always been my entire life. Two, this is my first hospital stay. I've never had surgery. I've never had an IV. That was my first IV I ever got. I've never stayed over in a hospital. I also, it was just me and my husband. My mom my mom had passed, like, so, like, there there was a lot of nerves going on. My mom was a labor and delivery nurse for 30 plus years, and I didn't have her there with me. So I was just anxious, I'm sure in general, and this is like our first baby. There's a lot of unknowns. So I'm sure like combination of like doing laps around the nurse's station on the floor mixed with just being anxious made my blood pressure shoot up. Um, and they like checked it here and there, and it was like it was elevated. It wasn't like crazy elevated, but it was elevated. And, it would come down and then it would kind of go back up. And I tried doing breathing and all sorts of stuff. But as the Pitocin kicked in, it just got a little bit harder when the pain kicked in too. So they gave me a couple options. It was high enough that they were concerned that they were starting to talk about a magnesium drip. And if anyone has had that or has knows what entails with that, it's something I really didn't want to do if I could avoid. And so, we were chatting about options. I was no longer walking around the hospital. I was trying to sit and be very calm. Even the nurse like left the room when she took my blood pressure and it'd be a little bit lower when she left the room because it almost felt like it was like this test I had to pass or something, really bad was going to happen or like I was going to go down like, I was like, oh, I've done so well this whole pregnancy, not at this point am I going to throw the ball in for, something happening due to me being anxious, which is really, where my mind was. So we talked about options and we were talking about an epidural because I was like 6 centimeters at that point without anything. And I was like, the doctor came in and was telling me, if you're going to get an epidural, you might want to do it now. You know, you don't want to not have the chance, later if you do want it. And I was talking about, I didn't want to do the magnesium drip. And so we were chatting and the nurse on call was really amazing. She was also pregnant. I think she was like 6 to 7 months pregnant, helping me. But she said that the epidural also would bring down my blood pressure and would probably allow me to not get the magnesium drip. And so I was like, okay, let's just get the epidural because I wasn't anti-epidural. I didn't need to be this like unsung hero of, doing it all without anything. And, I've wanted to have a birth is it can go like so many different ways. You can do everything right and, still end up, you know, having things happen. No matter like what your plans are, they're really it's you can only plan so much. So I was like, okay, let's get the epidural. I don't want to get the magnesium drip. Let's do that. So the anesthesiologist came in, they give me the epidural, and this is trying to think. My time frame is so kind of wild from that day. We went in again around like I got all hooked up by like 6 a.m. I'll also note that they did not let me eat after I was all hooked up. So I shoveled down 2 well-being bars, and that's all I had my entire time there, until after he came. So shout out to Wellbeing, you powered my labor. If anyone's interested, they're like a whole food plant-based bar with beans and they're great. But that's all I had the whole day, throughout my whole labor. So this time is probably around like I would say around like 2 p.m., something like that, 2, 3 p.m. So I get the epidural and then, everything's gravy. I no longer have any pain. My blood pressure came down. I'm able to kind of like take a moment and relax, not feeling like I have to like hunker down each contraction, like a moment of peace. And at the same time, I'm chatting to my labor and delivery nurse, who's also a pregnant lady who just took this this spinning babies class, and she's put me in all these different like positions because I'm like, I'm dilating really wonderfully. My I'm everything's going great, so I'm dilating. My cervix is at a good point. People were saying, "Oh, you're gonna have this baby by like 6 p.m." I'm like, "Great, let's get it." So they put me in all these different positions. Oh my gosh, like wild positions to try to move everything along. And I have the epidural and everything's feeling good until it stops. And I look at Mark and I go, "Huh, I don't I don't think I'm a giant wussy, but this hurts a whole heck of a lot." And it got to the point where I couldn't even talk. My face turned bright, bright red. I was clenching, white knuckling the side railing. Mark was like trying to comfort me and talk to me, and I was like, "I literally can't talk. Please stop talking. I can't do anything." And it was just awful. Mark made a comment how he's said he's never seen me in so much pain. And so the nurse came in, or we called the nurse, and she's like, "Well, you can push this pen that will give you a boost because it's like all regulated with how much medicine they give you." So I'm like pushing my pen. You have to wait a little bit. I'm pushing it again. I'm waiting a little bit. And it's not getting any better. It's really getting worse. Worse, 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 worse. Where I'm like, oh my God, if this is how it is with an epidural, no, there has to be something wrong. I feel like this is not how it should be with an epidural. Like, or something's not working. So they call the anesthesiologist back up. And she has me move, and my epidural is is broken. And it had been broken since the pain really started. So I was 8 centimeters, 9 centimeters dilated at this point, and it had been around a little over an hour of no meds with the pitocin. So highly don't recommend. It was not a fun time, and it was because they have the epidural in your back, but they tape the medicine drip to your back. So, like, it's in your lower back, but then they kind of, like, tape this one part up kinda by your shoulder, and whenever they were putting me in all these we were grooving with all these special, like, spinning baby moves where I'm, like, on my one side, I'm on my other side, I'm using a peanut ball, I'm like all different kinds of stuff. I'm using this rope thing that they had. I'm using a blanket tiled up. They're just like constantly like kind of moving you every 15 to 20 minutes. It came broken. So it was just like dripping down my back, and I felt bad. The anesthesiologist kind of yelled at the nurse obviously for not checking or not paying attention. I really didn't care. I just kinda looked at her saying, like, "Can you talk to her later? Can you fix me now? Is there a way to fix me? Is this fixable? Do I just have to do the rest without anything? This really sucks. I'm in a lot of pain." And so after, I guess, I don't know, she, like, sat there and, like, scolded the nurse for a little bit, which I was just like, "I don't care, it's fine, just fix me." They hooked me back up, and then they give you, like, a boost of fluid whenever you get your epidural, and Then my epidural really worked, and it worked almost to the point where, like, it kind of overworked, um, to the point where, like, they make you a little number than you really wanna be. I was surprised with the epidural that it's not like you just can't feel anything. They just kinda dull it, and then, again, you press the button as much as you kinda want to not feel, but the end goal is to still feel everything so you know when to push and whatnot. So they give me that, and then that comes in, and then sometime between this all happened between, like, 2 and, like, 5, and then at 6 PM, I ended up that after I got the epidural all fixed, it was again, I could breathe, my, like, face turned back to a normal color, it wasn't, like, violently red, I could make sentences. Had, like, a washcloth over my head, just trying to, like, take a moment and, recover from how painful that was. But then at 6 PM, they're like, "Okay, you're fully dilated, you look good. We're ready to push." Once the doctor, finishes what they're doing, they're gonna come over, we're gonna get you set up. So they did some practice pushes, and I was ready to go. And then, once the doctor came up and all was said, uh, I kind of started, and they have, you're there with, like, the nurses, and they had, it wasn't necessarily, like, the doctor who delivered him, it was, like, a physician assistant that kind of guided me through the pushes and, push, push, push. Well, he kept getting stuck on my pelvic bone, and I thought it was because I had this huge baby from all these ultrasounds, and I just thought, like, I'm petite, I'm only 4'11", oh my gosh, I have this giant baby. He's coming in all these ultrasounds like that he's gonna be like 9, 10 pounds. I'm petite, like, is he just, like, not gonna come out? Am I inevitable to get a C-section? Like, oh my gosh, he was head down my entire pregnancy. He was, like, in the right position to come out. And, I just kept pushing, 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 and then he finally got to the point where, like, we could see hair, and then he kinda revert back in. Um, and so, they're guiding me, they're like, "Okay, they do 3 sets of pushes, can you do," and I would do extra, I would do, like, 4 and then take a break. And I did that a ton for hours and hours, to the point where the doctor who delivered him said, "Can you keep going?" Are you able to do this? And I was just like, yes, I will do anything possible in my mind to avoid a C-section if possible. I can keep going. You need me to keep going? I can keep going. I'm not gonna stop going until you tell me there's not an option or this is dangerous. And luckily, Paul's heart rate was beautiful the entire time, because they even mentioned to me that most babies don't tolerate how long this was, and if his heart rate would have dropped, that's when we would have been in issues, but he had, like, a beautiful strong heartbeat, like, the entire time of me pushing, and I pushed for 5 hours. 5 hours. 5 hours. That is a long, long time to keep pushing. Um, But thank goodness they did switch nurses about this would have been, let me think, this would have been, like, closer to, like, 10:50. They switched nurses, and the nurse that came in made a comment that she had to go to the restroom, and she came back from the restroom and said, "You know what? I bet Brittany's bladder is full. She has been pushing for a really long time." And, like, I'm a newbie. I have no idea what to look for. Whenever they give you an epidural, they give you a catheter so you can't get up and go to the bathroom, but they remove the catheter whenever you start pushing. So they remove my catheter at 6 PM, around there, 6:30, and somewhere in between that, and they took it out, and I also had this big extra amount of fluid pushed because that epidural that had to get fixed, and then, like, I can't feel anything, I don't know if I need to go to the bathroom, I'm trying to feel contractions and push and whatnot, and, they go and they empty me my bladder, and he was born a half an hour later. So I just, like, I'm so thankful for that nurse who had that thought to check that bladder, because if not, the other thing was around the time that she came in and said that, they gave me about a half an hour time stop where we were gonna have to go get a C-section, because, again, I had been pushing for so long, and they can't tell really how big the baby is till the baby comes out. They can't tell anything. So within them emptying my bladder, a couple pushes, he was out. I literally cannot believe that the whole thing kind of went the whole day. He was born at like 11:33. He also was a 7 pound 1 ounce baby. So all of my ultrasounds were incorrect with the growth measurements. I must have just had extra fluid. He was not a giant baby. He was very average size, which I kind of thought, I mean, even like the way I was carrying and when they would feel my belly at my appointments too, it wasn't like I was like, "Does he feel big?" Like, I don't know, like, the scale isn't really adding up to what they're saying, but I don't know, and then, like, it's so hard to tell. I was like, I didn't have, any, like, risk factors for having big babies. I was not a big baby. Mark was slightly bigger than me. He was 8 pounds and some, but I was like a 6 pound, some almost 7 pound baby myself. And so thank goodness they were wrong. Thank goodness he was only 7 pounds, 1 ounce. He came out and we had him at 11:33 at night on the 23rd of May. And yeah, that's my birth story. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot more um details and stuff, but that's like the gist of it. And then we got to our room by like 2 a.m. And let me tell you, on 2 hours of sleep and 2 well-being bars, and then going to your room at 2 a.m., and then not really able to sleep because you obviously have a baby that you have to feed right away, and it was just, like, running on adrenaline for a while. That was tough, because also, like, sleeping in a hospital isn't the best. I'm sure some of you guys know that, and just, all the things. So, but I just wanted to share my story. If anyone is ever in a situation where you're pushing for a long time, have them check your bladder. Because surprisingly, also my mom's birth story, which I wish she was here, I could like ask her questions. She had a very similar birth story where she pushed and pushed and pushed, and with hers, she did end up with a C-section with me, and I just wonder, like, I wonder if they checked her bladder, but it's a shame I can't ask, but anyway, he came out healthy, happy, I was healthy and happy, and, also my recovery also was, like, pretty fantastic, which I do somewhat attribute to a whole food plant-based lifestyle that I, like, felt great. Um I didn't have to take any Tylenol or ibuprofen once I left the hospital. Like, they give you some the days after, but, like, they gave me a whole big amount to bring home. I didn't take any when I got home, didn't felt like I had to. I never had to take a stool softener, and let me just tell you, I was like, never been so excited to tell the nurse that I went, number 1, number 2, just a couple hours after I gave birth, and it was fine. It didn't I was, like, so scared about it, but that ended up being totally fine, no pain, anything like that. So again, another blessing to whole food plant-based lifestyle and the diet. And didn't have to take a stool softener when I got home because they also gave me a big container of that. And what else? And just recovery, like, everything down there was for you would think for pushing for 5 hours. I was, like, worried that I was gonna go to the bathroom mirror and see all the blood vessels broken in my eyes. No, thank God. I kept thinking like, "Oh, I don't know what I look like. Do I wanna even know what I look like after pushing for so long?" None of that. Uh Downstairs healed very quickly. I would think that it would have been a lot more painful and, um, just in general, thankfully, everything else went great. And yeah, I don't know. I just, attribute to a lot of the how I got through it to this lifestyle, and, and and very happy that we did this route through the hospital. Because again, for me, I've heard so many horror stories of things that can go sideways, and I just felt more comfortable making sure we both were there if we needed something, it was available to us. Because again, it wasn't something I really wanted to play with. Um, and I'm happy that we did. The only, the only, and this could have been how he was positioned in my womb. Also, I think me pushing for so long as well and him coming in and out of my pelvic bone also kind of attributed is that our little guy ended up with torticollis, which is just like the one side of your neck is kind of the muscles in there aren't as strong and kind of because your head has been kind of crunched. Your neck is kind of crunched in one position in the womb and also at birth. And so we right now are doing physical therapy for that. It's just more of like strengthening his neck and stretching. It's nothing that's like long term. Very, very, very common. I feel like a lot of people don't talk about torticollis though, but something we kind of noticed is that he was favoring one side over the other. So every time he sleeps, we make him sleep on the other side. Like I said, we do lots of stretches with him, and it's something that will clear up pretty easily. It's just day-to-day maintenance on our part to make sure that we stretch both sides of his neck and that we help lots of tummy time to strengthen it. But at 3 months now, we are moving and grooving in the right direction, and he's growing and super happy. So, I'm so happy you guys stayed and listened. I'm so happy to share the birth story with you guys. Yeah, just it was a wild a ride, something I had always wanted to experience. Like I always wanted to experience being pregnant and birth and I was always just curious about how contractions were gonna feel and everything, and it is true that you feel like a superhero after. Every time I look at him, I just think like, "Wow, I can't believe my body grew that," and how, just everything kind of feels like, almost like a movie that you're, like, watching, and it was, like, real life and I was there. But yeah, I don't know, it's pretty wild. I will try to always reflect on that long day when it's his birthday because I'm so proud of myself for, like, getting through it, and, yeah, it was a lot of work, that labor, but, so happy that my body and myself were able to overcome, and, I attribute it to it being a positive birth story. It was really for me, I kind of got the feeling that my birth was, um, a hard birth because every doctor, like, right after I had him, the doctor that delivered him while they're, like, cleaning you up, she told me, she's like, "Now you paved the way, your second one won't be as hard. Don't be afraid if you have a second one." And then every doctor who, like, came in after just to, like, check in was like, "I heard you were a rock star. I heard you did amazing. I can't believe you" I think someone told me that I officially was, like, the longest pushing time that they had, like, I don't know if they said ever in the last couple years or whatnot, but um, yeah, just very lucky that everything worked out, we were able to get him out, and, so cool that he shares a birthday on the 23rd. Little man wanted to be his own person, didn't wanna share a birthday with my mom, which is totally fine. Always we always have that as, like, so special, and to be honest, it's usually ends up around Memorial Day weekend, so who knows, his birthday parties might end up being around that date, but yeah, I mean, it's so special, but on the 23rd of May, but Mark's birthday is also on the 23rd of September, and that's when I told him we were pregnant with Paul. So, like, there's so many things that, like, line up with being special, for us. But anyway, I'm starting to ramble. Okay, I'm gonna end this because, his nap time will be coming to an end very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening, and I will be back with another podcast soon talking about the first couple months of his life and sharing some really fun things. All right. If you need anything, make sure you send us an email, reach out and message us. If you want to share your birth story, I'd love to hear it. It's so amazing how different and similar so much of us go through, and just to celebrate because I feel like uh, anyone who goes through giving birth, however you do it, you're such a rock star because it is overwhelming, scary, beautiful, uh, anxiety driven, spiritual, all of the things kind of like wrapped up into one. All right, I will see you guys next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.